Welcome back to Product Ask Me Anything at Product AMA on Twitter. My name's Garrison, and I'm your host today. And for those of you who don't know me, I've been in the Toronto startup and product management community for many years now. I've seen a lot of changes, but I can tell you that I've never seen anything like this. So it's great for everybody to rally together and get to know each other online and contribute and help us all feel purposeful. So if this is your first Product Ask Me Anything event, let me just explain. It's a community event that Mark Silver and I started last week, so that everybody's calendar could have something scheduled on a daily basis, and we could look forward to that and also share the things that we're passionate about in the product management community. So the format's going to be roughly an hour. I'm going to take about the first half of it to ask questions of Jonah and talk, and then we'll leave the other half open for your questions. And if you have a question, please do it directly on the Twitter feed. So at Product AMA on Twitter, and ask your questions there, and we'll get to them as we go. So I'll pick a few questions from that, and then our plan is to answer all the questions. So if we don't get to it in the discussion here, then we certainly will answer it on Twitter. So don't feel like you're getting left out. And we're also recording this, so there will be a recording of today's posting as well as the previous ones on YouTube. And to get in touch with us, if you have feedback or suggestions for future topics or speakers, direct message us on the Twitter account at Product AMA. So today our topic is digital transformations, and we want to focus on how agencies are supporting clients with strategic projects around digital transformation. And joining us to help explain the topic and connect it to the world of product management is Jonah Morris from the Huge Agency. Welcome, Jonah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Lee. Really excited to chat with you.
You're welcome. Good. Nice to see you. So just before we get into the world of digital transformation, I'm really curious about your path to product management, because you've been working in media for a while, sports and TSN and CTV and Bell. So what got you interested in product management?
You know, I think my path to product management is probably similar to a lot of different people. I'm not sure that I actually knew what product management was for a long time. I started working, in digital. I worked for tsn.ca, working as a writer and a video editor. And an opportunity came along during the 2012 Olympics, working with the broadcast consortium, so CTV and Rogers, managing the website. And I was in charge of the video experience on that website. I thought I got hired to do editorial for video. Turns out I was actually got hired to shape the video experience during those games, and turns out that I really liked it. I really enjoyed owning that experience, shaping how users watch video, their experiences. Was really excited, and so from that I kind of knew that product management was where I wanted to go. There was a lot of opportunity in media, and I was able to kind of transition from the content side to the product management side. It's funny, the more people I talk to on the product side, it seems like nobody ever really kind of sets out to become a product manager, but they kind of find their way there,
Right.
through happenstance or through kind of the changing nature of business, and the need for those digital expertise.
Yeah. No, we call it the accidental profession, because we all come from somewhere else.
Yeah.
We always used to say that nobody goes to university for product management, right? They get into it from other areas. But now, thankfully, after so many years, we're starting to see some programs at the post-secondary level. So I know there's a few schools in the U.S. that are doing specialized programs, and both Ryerson, Ted Rogers School, and Schulich up at York are talking about doing pilots in it, because they're getting a lot of interest. So maybe that's changing. We'll see. Huge as an agency is kind of known for being design led. So what's the role of a product manager in such a creative environment? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's actually a really exciting an exciting experience to kind of work in that design atmosphere. We have some incredible designers. You know, they could be experienced designers, visual designers, interaction designers. There's more designers than I ever knew about
Mm,
before I joined Huge. And you know, the product manager plays a kind of very similar role to on the agency side, at least at Huge, that they might play on the client side. And that's often as a connector between different groups or different disciplines that are required to bring, you know, a digital project to life or digital product to life. You
mhm,
know, and oftentimes, you know, with Huge, you know, we're trying to like bridge the gap or bridge and bring together the idea of satisfying, you know, these unmet user needs
mhm,
that we've uncovered, and also using that as a way to meet our business objectives. And so the
mhm,
product manager is somebody who, you know, not only, you know, really deeply understands like the voice of the customer and the user needs, but also understands the business needs and helps shape a strategy, a product, a process that is going to help us achieve that goal for our clients.
right. Awesome. That's really interesting, and I love the idea that product is not just software applications or hardware, but it's really encompassing that whole experience, right? Which even those of us that have been in software for so many years have learned over the last number of years that it is not just about the features, it's about the whole user experience. And so we're working much more closely with designers at the early stages, than we used to before. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
imagine
and
that's you're I assume you're not necessarily working on software applications per se for clients, but more that whole experience with content as well and programming, right?
yeah, you know what? Well, this is what's really exciting about working for Huge and really kind of any agency is the variety of different projects that we get to work on. You know, I like to joke that, you know, I feel like I have a new job every 3 to 4 months. You know, every time we have a new engagement, I'm working with a new client potentially in a new industry that I never even thought about. So,
Mm,
you know,
mm,
I've been with Huge about 2.5 years. You know, and I've worked with banks. I've worked with grocery retailers, with sporting good retailers, with telecommunication companies. I have worked with, you know, just a different variety, just an incredible variety of different clients. And each of those clients have like a really fascinating uh, problem and challenge and objectives that they're trying to face.
mhm,
And it's exciting to be able to kind of immerse yourself in their problems and their challenges. So um, you know, and some of those challenges aren't just, you know, I need a new website. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. You know, there was a really cool engagement that I worked on with one of my colleagues at Huge. This was about a year and a half ago. We were working with a bank out in Western Canada, and they were taking a look at their marketing department, and they felt that they weren't particularly effective in terms of how they brought marketing campaigns to market. Typically what would happen was, and tell me if this sounds familiar, somebody would go into like a dark room, spend, you know, a month noodling about an idea, emerge from the room and say, aha, I have it, you
mhm,
know, and then the whole organization, you know, they're really great people, and they would rally around this person and bring this idea to market.
mhm,
But there was never any like, you know, there's never any testing, there was never any seeing if it was effective, you know, and oftentimes these campaigns would kind of fall flat, you
mhm,
know. um, and so what this bank asked us to do was, can you bring agile methodology to our marketing group?
mhm,
And agile, you know, has been increasingly becoming more popular, not just in marketing but in HR process as well as software development. You know, and so we ended up spending about 3 4 months coaching them on agile, and using these a brand new consumer campaign as kind of like the test product, like the MVP to bring it to market.
mhm,
And from my standpoint, you know, coaching them in agile, my product, the product that I was managing, was the process of agile, you
mhm,
know, and it was, you know, really, really fascinating in terms of like taking some of that product thinking and applying it to a process and applying it to people who, you know, had maybe heard about agile, but they didn't really know what it was.
mhm,
and so that was pretty fascinating. And I think, to your point, I think product thinking has become, a pretty powerful tool that can be applied not just to software development, but actually, a whole suite of different objectives.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. No, I don't know about you, but I come from a, science background, and so for me, what's evolved in the lean methodologies and agile is that iterative, hypothesis driven, validation driven, sort of philosophy. And it very much resonates with, my original roots, which is, okay, we have a hypothesis, we're going to test it out, we're making assumptions, and we're going to learn from that and modify our hypothesis after that, right? And
Yeah,
so
it was.
that iterative approach is great to see in the business environment, because when I started in software before internet days, I mean, our development cycles were like 18 months, right? And you had a team of 40 developers working on something for a year and a half, and you'd spent millions of dollars on it, and then when you get ready to launch, it's like, oh God, I hope this works,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's changed a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and what was great about working with this bank and in this campaign is that we were very rigorous in that test and learn and that iterative,
Hmm.
pushing that idea forward, and we forced them to test every single step of the way. So you have an idea, let's test it as an elevator pitch. You know,
Hmm.
you have even a design concept, let's test that right away. To the point where we were even encouraging them to like go buy pizza for your interns, get
Hmm.
20 interns in a room
Hmm.
and show them this concept and see how they react to it. And to be honest, they came away and I love this quote. One of our clients said, he goes, I really pushed back, I really resisted on the idea of testing. But every single time I put it in front of users, I learned something new.
Hmm.
And that was actually like a great eureka, a great aha moment for him as well as for us. Was you know putting in front of that iterative process can just be so valuable, can really help de-risk your whatever you're trying to do, whether it's a
Hmm.
product, whether it's a campaign, and it really helps sharpen what you're actually trying to build.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the client side. Tell us more about the kinds of companies that are working on digital transformations, and what kinds of things are they focusing on? How does that impact their business?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the clients that we work on, not everybody, but a lot of them are what I might call like a legacy company. They are companies like a bank, maybe like a retailer, who are feeling pressure in other parts of their business. If they're a grocery retailer, there's somebody like an Instacart that might be coming into their industry and kind of upending consumer expectations on what their product is. Or if it's a bank, it could be like a microservice that has focused on a single part of their business and is doing it really, really well. So a lot of the time is it's a legacy company that feel pressure and feel the need to start transforming how their business operates. And the big pressure that they're feeling is that increasingly, customers are exposed to all these different digital products right now. So those expectations are felt on them. So, and what I mean by that is, when I use Netflix and the user experience and the interface is very easy, or if I use Uber Eats, you know, um, customers expect that quality of experience when they interact with their bank, when they interact with their grocery retailer.
Mhm.
And so, in order to stay competitive and to stay relevant in their customers' lives, a lot of these companies are looking to Huge to help not only redesign a website or redesign an app, but really look from top to bottom from a strategic standpoint or even from a process standpoint in terms of how they actually bring products to market. They're
Mhm.
looking for better ways to do things, ways that they can be faster to market, as you talked about, more competitive, and more in line with customer expectations right now.
Mhm. And do your clients typically have product teams already?
Yeah, some do. Oftentimes they are kind of informal product teams. They'll be, it could be somebody's, area of specialty. Maybe they're on the marketing team and it's their area of specialty. Um, typically they don't necessarily have formal product managers or product teams. And that's one of the first things that we try to elicit from them is the importance of finding that product owner,
Mhm.
and specifically an empowered product owner. We want somebody on their side that has skin in the game, that is empowered to make decisions, that can find the right people to answer questions throughout the organization.
Mhm.
And when we work, especially from my standpoint as a product manager, I work very, very closely with this person. I try to be, two peas in a pod with this person because, we want to ensure that, we're meeting their requirements, and we want to ensure that in order to deliver these products, we're getting the right answers, we're getting the things we need from our client. And, an empowered product owner is super, super important.
Mhm.
One of the challenges we face is that it, the product owners aren't always empowered. Oftentimes there's like large companies, and there's a lot of different voices, and there's a lot of different people that have opinions and thoughts. And so it can be a bit of a challenge for the product owner to be empowered,
Mhm.
which is something that we really kind of try to push forward with all our clients.
Mhm. Nice. Yeah. And so really a key kind of success factor is finding that owner, who's got the power to, align the different parts of the organization, I guess. What about the process side? I mean, it sounds like if a lot of these clients don't necessarily have a product team per se, they probably don't have really a structured process of any sort either, right? And so how do you
Yeah,
guys approach that? Like how do you approach that lack of process and get something in place?
yeah, that's a great question. That's a good challenge too. I mean, oftentimes, especially when we're in kind of like an execution or production type phase, we do kind of lean on agile methodology to do that. So we structure our process in 2 week sprints. We have very defined ceremonies, and whenever possible, I really try to bring the product owner into all of those ceremonies. I want them to see how the sausage is made, from our standpoint. I want them to see, you know, um, what a good requirement looks like, what a
Mhm.
good user story looks like, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, but also just as importantly, I want them to feel a sense of like uh, purpose and a sense of like alignment. I want, we try whenever possible to involve not just the product owner, but as many different stakeholders and relevant stakeholders as possible in some kind of co-creation process because I
Mhm.
want them to feel invested. Um, One, that's going to help us do our job better, and help create a better product. But also at the end of the day, look, we're an agency, right? Our engagement isn't indefinite. There's going to
Mhm.
be a time when the product owner or some other stakeholder in the organization is going to have to go away and stand up and say, hey, this is our website, this is our product.
Mhm.
And if they help co-create this product, you know, they, as I mentioned, they have skin in the game and they can actually stand in front of it. They can explain, why do we make this design decision? Why do we
Mhm.
build it this way? What was the strategic purpose for that? I think it's an incredibly important part of what we do is help ultimately help our product owners and help our clients eventually fish for themselves. You
Right.
know, um, and so co-creation is an incredible part of that. Transparency is a really part of that. Um, but, those are two pretty powerful ways to help
Mhm.
bring our client into the process and hopefully take something away so that they can do it themselves afterwards after we leave.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that's the sign of, that consultative approach is really being a coach and a mentor, but also setting up, and walking the team through an experience so that, yeah, so as you say, they can fish for themselves or you're transferring the knowledge, so to speak. And that's great. I mean, I think that's really powerful. And it's amazing to see, sort of the product management discipline start to spread throughout other organizations that have never really even thought of it as a discipline, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and the more we work with clients, like that, I think the more they see the need for that. They see the need for the product manager, or at the very least, a product owner, somebody that can really kind of help shepherd
Mhm.
stakeholders across the organization and bring them in and help them feel involved and invested in the transformation in the new product.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Let me just step back here for a second and remind all the folks on the call, all the participants here, that we are taking questions. So get yourself on Twitter and go to @productama for Ask Me Anything, and ask your questions there. And pretty soon, Jonah and I will turn to answering some of those. So get them flowing, and we can get to them pretty quick. So so Jonah, uh, what what function of your client's business is kind of driving these projects? I mean, you talked a little bit earlier about kind of business objectives, but is it typically like a marketing function or executive management? Like, where's it coming from?
Yeah, great question. It's frequently from a marketing department, and a lot of times, the digital group will roll up into the marketing group. So it's often marketing, though we have seen that it can come from like the executive level. And there was one client we worked with Longos for a while, and for those not based here in Toronto, Longos is a local grocery retailer. They're really well known for really kind of the quality of food and their expertise around food. You go in there to find the person who's an expert on cheese, right? And
Mhm.
who can give you, the exact right pairing for, maybe that dinner that you're making.
Mhm.
Um, and so we worked with them for a long time. And, what was kind of neat about that engagement was kind of the breadth of where they asked us to look. Um, and I was a relatively small part of this, but, people throughout Huge worked on this. They asked us to look from not just their digital experience, but also their in-store experience, right? Uh, and you know what we looked at is, and this is something that Huge really advocates, is trying to identify, like, user problems. What are the user problems that people are facing, right?
Mhm.
um, and so we looked at solving issues both in store and online, and often, how can we bridge the two, right? So we helped relaunch their website, longos.com. Please go to their website. I love it. It's one of the best things that our design team has ever built. It's
Mhm.
really, really cool. And we helped build some of the meal kits, or the in shopping experience that's happened there. So that's an example of kind of, I hate using this word because it's like such a buzzword, like the omni-channel, or the kind of the
Right.
holistic uh, uh, examples of us kind of like tackling problems both in the real world and
Mhm.
online.
Right.
Um, but one of the things that was like really neat about that was understanding how much those two overlap. Meaning I could be in the store and
Mhm.
on my phone at the same time, right? And so I'm in two places or two settings at the same time, and digital kind of helps support your in-store experience, and your in-store experience can also drive, what does your digital experience look like?
Right, right. Yeah, that is amazing. And I think we first heard the sort of omni-channel word about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago maybe. And in fact, it was really interesting. We had a session at the TPMA with, now I'm trying to remember his name, Jason Ing, I think, or he was the head product guy at Holt Renfrew at the
Mm,
time. And I thought, because I've been in software my whole career, I thought, Holt Renfrew, what are they doing? They're going to build an app? but
mhm,
but it was exactly what you say. It was them. They were an early adopter of that. Okay, we have to figure out how to combine those two worlds to give our customers the optimal experience, right? And now, of course, 10 years ago you would have never seen this, but now, of course, not just the banks have digital labs, but Walmart has a big digital lab with, I don't know, like dozens, if not 100 product managers, right?
yeah.
Loblaw's digital, same thing. So they're all approaching it, yeah, as a, as a as a product experience type design, right? Um, that's neat. That's neat. So, uh, like from a product management perspective, what what do like tell us, maybe pick another example of like how do you take product management principles into a client environment?
Great. I think probably the one area where we can be most effective, or when we're most needed, is around prioritization. I mean,
Mm,
that's such a core tenet of product management. And like, let's just be honest, frankly, it's really hard to prioritize. It's hard to prioritize in our daily lives. It's hard to prioritize as a business. There's so
mhm,
many things you want to do. How do you prioritize, and how do you ensure that you're doing the things that are going to generate the most amount of value, the ones that are going to, so from a business standpoint, are going to generate the most amount of user value for
mhm,
and
mhm,
so we have a number of interesting techniques, whether it's like a workshop or whether it's different frameworks that really help try to focus our customers, our clients, and really try to get a sense of what their priorities are. One
mhm,
of the frameworks I really really like using is the Moscow frameworks.
mhm,
For those who aren't familiar, Moscow stands for must have, should have, could have, and won't. And you basically kind of go through, all the features or all the themes of your product, and you determine, what's a must, what's a nice to have, what's a good to have, and what's a won't. And that framework's really effective, I think, not only for digital products, but it's actually good, even for non-digital products,
mhm,
or for
mhm,
different processes, right? Because you have just as much of the same constraints, not enough time, not enough money, and so how are you going to focus your efforts, and how are you going to prioritize what you do? So I think
mhm.
prioritization is one of the things that product managers can really bring in terms of value to a client, regardless of what that engagement looks like.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's neat. I think, and oftentimes that whole discussion around prioritization, if you have experience with it, you have to go back to business objectives, right?
Hmm.
What are the business objectives? And I'm sure as a, as an agency, just as my experience as a consultant, when you say, okay, so what's the business objective? And you kind of get a blank stare, and,
Hmm.
well, it's complicated. Okay, let's start to unpack that, and then we'll have a good model for prioritization, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always important. And sometimes, part of it is just trying to elicit what the business objective is. As you said,
Right, right.
we feel we got to do something, but why? And what is it going to accomplish for us?
Mm-hmm,
So I mean, that's really important. And then one of the really great things about Huge is how obsessed and focused on the customer Huge is from a design
mm-hmm,
standpoint. So
mm-hmm,
you know when we prioritize, we're going to prioritize based on business value, but we're also going to prioritize based on user value. How much
mm-hmm,
value are we actually delivering to the customer? Do they actually need this, and is this actually solving a problem for them? So I think that's a pretty important criteria. Um,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
in fact, really makes me think um, how much um, design thinking, user centricity really does kind of fall in line with really strong product management thinking.
mm-hmm,
One of the things we really try to one of the frameworks or tools that we really use at Huge is jobs theory, the jobs to be done
right.
theory.
Clayton
Yeah, and
Christensen. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar, Clayton Christensen, he was a Harvard Business School professor, and he came up with helped develop the innovator's dilemma and this jobs theory, jobs to be done theory, which is basically customers, or they don't necessarily pick a product. What they're actually doing is they're actually trying to hire a product to help them complete a job and to
Mm-hmm,
help them make progress in their lives. And I think that that's a really really powerful it's been a really really powerful theory for us. The one example, one of the examples I really love is when we talk about, like, why does a customer buy a smoke detector, right? Well, I want the smoke detector, I want to tell me, when there's a fire in my house, right? Well, I mean, yes, but what's the underlying motivation behind why I want to know if there's a fire in my house?
mm-hmm,
The underlying motivation is that I want myself and my family to feel safe,
mm-hmm,
right? That's the job that I'm actually hiring a smoke detector to do for me, is to make me feel safe in my house. So this jobs theory, I think, it helps kind of elicit motivations,
mm-hmm,
user motivations. And so, um, we live in like a very fast-paced digital times, and you know, that can change very quickly. What doesn't change very quickly is our motivations. The idea of like feeling safe for my family, wanting to feel my family safe. It's kind of like a universal truth, right? And so when we take that jobs theory and we pair it with like the idea of like prioritization through user value, it's an incredibly powerful way to really focus on what you're building and why you're doing it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, I often get the question, should we use user stories or can we replace that with jobs to be done? And I say like, well, actually, no, it's still good, useful to use both. Like, I don't have any problem with you creating user stories that you're going to, put on the wall and work through from, epics down to, very granular level. But every once in a while, you need to ask yourself about the job to be done because it gives you a completely different perspective on it, right? For those of you that are listening and aren't familiar with Jobs to Be Done or Clayton Christensen, there's a search on YouTube. There's a wonderful video that he did called The Milkshake Story, where he uses a milkshake project to illustrate how it works. And it's great fun. It's not long. It's like 5 minutes or something. So I would highly recommend you take a look at that. Tell me about working with your clients' customers. So obviously we all know that, one of the big challenges of product is, nothing important happens in the office. You have to get out into the field, have to talk to customers, experience their pain and their business process or whatever. How do you guys bridge that with your clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that we advocate early and often. We make it, a pretty key point to, why are you hiring Hugh? Just because we believe, in the power of talking to customers and getting out there and really speaking to people. So we try to reinforce that, and sometimes it can be very guerrilla. Like, there was, again, when we were working with the bank out west. They worked in a very large office complex. We went down to the ground floor of the office complex. There was a whole bunch of other people there from different companies, and we just really kind of like we try to harass anybody we could, And I think at the time we wanted to show them a 30-second clip, and we had a little iPad with us, and we just kind of sequestered them in a corner, and we asked them, what do you think about this, So it could be a very guerrilla type method, or it could be more structured where they're helping to source us customers or potentially prospects, and then we're actually able to have like a proper interview with them. So it can be a bit of a challenge, but I can't advocate enough just how important it is, and I'll give you a great example from my time with Bell Media. So for a time I worked as product manager on Crave TV, and so Crave TV, again, for those who aren't Canadian, is a streaming service here that is a bit of a competitor to Netflix. They stream shows from HBO and Showtime and Warner and all sorts of different stations. Mm-hmm. And so we were introducing a new platform that they could watch it on. They could watch it on Samsung TV, and in order to sign into the Samsung TV, they had to kind of go through this process of going to a website and punching in this code and signing in with their credentials. And at the time, we didn't really think much of it. It was a pretty, an experience and a flow that we thought was well known. Well, so we launched it, and one of the first things we did was I ended up going to the customer care center and spending about 8 hours listening to phone calls from customers calling in, looking to try to figure out how do they sign into their Samsung Smart TV on Crave TV. And it was at the same time incredibly enlightening and incredibly humbling, listening to actual people say, I don't get it. I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense to me. The mistake we made at the time was we didn't dedicate enough time to actually talking to customers, showing customers, and getting feedback from them. And unfortunately, we paid for it with a lot of confused customers.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I imagine that story helps convince your clients that they do need to talk to customers more.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, we have a question from Dave Carpenter.
How you doing, Jonah?
Hey, Dave. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good. It's interesting. Your work is very interesting. What's your process for integrating content, and what types of content with the clients that you cited are you seeing as probably are the most sought after or effective?
The best products that I've worked on are ones where content and content strategy is really integral um, early on in the design process. Even before you get to wireframes, you know, we were talking about like, what is the content that goes in this box, and what is an effective way to communicate that, and just as importantly, how is our client going to be able to operationalize this? If this is a widget that is changing let's say it's every day, who's actually doing that? Who's actually going to update that content? And you know, do our clients actually have the right people, the right resources in place to make that manageable? So in terms of like how do we integrate it? We try to bring them in. We try to bring our content people in, as early as possible. Our content strategists in as early as possible, and they really kind of help lead the way in terms of like leading into the user experience, the wireframes, because it's going to be the content that helps shape kind of the container that it lives in, not the other way around. And I think too often we go the other way around, where we design these boxes and we say, okay, what the hell is going to go inside of it? It really needs to go the other way. What is the content that's going to be most effective for our customers, for our end users, that is going to persuade them? And then now, if we understand that, what is the best way to deliver that content? What is the right design pattern that is going to help us realize that?
What kind of insights or data are you looking at? Is it with a client, say, past performance of content? Does past data lead you, say, with a call to action to think, okay, we need this here, or this type of content on the first step of the entry point? So I just was interested in how you choose the content to lead people down the garden path.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the challenges and one of the traps, I think, with relying too much on previous analytics. So if you were redesigning a website, there can be an over reliance on what worked previously, and that if it's a website or an app, that app might not have been effective. That website might not have been effective, and so an over reliance on old data can serve a little bit as a trap. The past isn't always the best predictor of the future. Sometimes it is, but it isn't always. And so I think it's just a matter of being careful and using that data in more of like a directional standpoint, rather than trying to serve it. It's the Bible of the way we're going to do forward. What I do think is really the most effective is, again, user tested and user validation, in terms of like if it's a content, if it's a video, if you're trying to decide if something should be a video or an article, how can you put that in front of customers and users and actually get a better sense on what's going to be most effective for them? That could be, do I want to see something in a slideshow format, or do I want to see something in a video? Do I want to see something in an article, or do I want to see something as more of like a snippet, right? I do think that going directly to customers is ultimately going to kind of be a more effective and kind of like a longer lasting success than just relying on some of the previous metrics.
Cool, that's great. Thanks. Thanks for your question, Dave. So just as a reminder for participants, if you have a question, get on the Twitter handle @ProductAMA and ask your questions, and we'll get to them as soon as I see them. So Jonah, let's keep talking about metrics a little bit. That was kind of interesting. Like, one of the conversations that comes up a lot is, and especially more recently, is, okay, how do you approach key metrics that you want to use as a product manager, right? And it's become pretty apparent that there's no sort of cookie cutter approach. Like, there's no one set of metrics that these are the be all and end all, right? It depends on the context and your objectives and that sort of thing. So how do you guys approach that with a client?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of that stems from our business objectives. We really try to dig into those business objectives, and try to determine, how do we measure success when it comes to those specific business objectives. And sometimes it's hard. I won't lie. It's hard to find, what is the right KPI, what is the right measure of success. And I think the answer is like you don't have to necessarily settle on one. If we come back to like our iterative process, there's a possibility that you could try a couple of different metrics to see how effective they are in terms of measuring what your customers are doing. So it can be a challenge. It can be a challenge, both client side and agency side, to try to find those metrics.
So can you think of a sort of typical example? Like, so let's say I don't know, somebody like Longo's had this sort of content and app process, and how what are the kind of steps you think through to get to some meaningful metrics?
Yeah. So again, we would try to define, first we'd start with our business objective. So what is it we're trying to get out of this app? Is it something like engagement, right? So are we trying to are we trying to boost the number of visitors? Are we trying to boost the number of, page views, maybe time on site? What is it that we think that we're actually trying to accomplish? And then what we try to actually do is we try to tie that back to, what is it that our customers actually are trying to accomplish on that? So time on site might be good, but it might actually not be effective because our customers maybe are just coming quickly to take a look at the flyer, see what's on sale, and then jumping off. So our time on site might be really low, but our visits might be really high. And so that might be, a more effective measure of success for us. So I think a key part there is really kind of trying to wrap the context around what we're trying to do, what our customers are trying to do in terms of understanding the right measure of success with them.
Yeah, and oftentimes you're looking for leading indicators, right? So it's not necessarily just one final metric, right? Which ultimately is a transaction, maybe a revenue dollar. But what are the leading indicators up to that? So I guess my question is, do you guys use things like customer journey? How do you approach that and understand what those leading indicators might be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we're big advocates of the user journey. I think one of maybe sometimes the shortcomings that we think, or the blinders that we think, is that just a customer just kind of emerges on your site out of thin air. Well, I mean, that's not really accurate, right? Typically, they have followed some kind of journey, some kind of path to get to your website, right? And that path might have invoked different feelings, different thoughts. So if we use the example of Longo's, and I'm looking for bananas, maybe maybe our user is a new parent, and they have a child who really loves bananas, and you go to Google and you search bananas, and you end up on the Longo's website, right? All that customer journey, all those different moments in the journey can really help shape the experience that you give. So again, if I go back to my jobs theory, my original motivation is, I want to help, provide for my family. So if I know that, how might I shape the experience when I actually do land on the website? And there are different, we try to like map those different moments in the journey to different kind of sentiments. It could be, I'm hopeful, or I'm frustrated, or I'm searching for something. We try to map those back to different mindsets so that we have a better understanding of the context with which customers actually come and engage with our digital products.
That's great. Yeah. So it's the old sort of swim lanes with, what is the customer thinking at this point? What are they doing and what are they feeling, right? And it's all of those elements together that help you get the insight. Yeah. That's
great. I
great.
mean, and all of that is like powerful context to really understand, what it is that you need to do, you need to deliver on your customers. And I think that, all that kind of rolls into, not only how you design, but how you build the products itself.
Yeah, for sure. So just as a reminder, we're taking questions on Ask Me Anything here on Product Ask Me AMA. So go to our Twitter handle @ProductAMA and ask your questions away. We're talking to Jonah Morris from a huge agency, who is actually a product manager at a huge agency. Or the huge agency, I should say. Sorry.
The huge agency.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Okay, that's great. I love it. So so obviously we're in a kind of strange environment right now. And people are talking a lot about, okay, how do we adapt to working remotely and stuff? And we just talked about customer intimacy and going and talking, spending time with customers. What kind of advice do you have for product managers who are struggling with that right now? What are you doing?
Yeah, I am doing, I'm trying to take, even small steps in terms of like building some intimacy and some a relationship with different clients. So just an example, I was on a phone call earlier, and we're all video conferencing, everybody's on a Google Hangout. And one thing that we've tried to do and tried to be disciplined about is turning the video camera on, when we're having a phone call. If this had happened a month ago, I probably would have turned the video camera off and just been audio only. And, and I think, that I would have felt most comfortable about that.
And you wouldn't have had such a beautiful backdrop behind you.
And I wouldn't have had such a beautiful, beautiful backdrop. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I was really enjoying the virtual backgrounds here on Zoom. But, given the environment, trying to build, relationships with people. So, I've started to, turn my camera on, and it's at first a kind of uncomfortable situation because, suddenly I have to be aware of, my facial expressions, and if I'm doing something else, and if I'm answering an email somewhere else, how am I reacting? But I think it's a small thing that just kind of shows that you're actually talking to a real person, and not just some ones and zeros on the other line. I think that's kind of like a small thing that we've started to do, and I've started to do with our clients. And I hope that is like a small thing that can help make people feel just a little more connected in kind of a weird time right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine that you're working on some projects or some client projects, as we speak. Like over the last week, how has that changed for you?
It's funny. So I'm working on two specific projects right now. One with a telecommunication company out of the U.S., and then one with a smaller company here in Canada. And the one here in Canada, I'm working with some developers who are based in Europe. And in many ways, my life hasn't changed. I'm on Slack all day. I'm on Google Hangouts all day with them. We operate out of Jira all the time. And so this hasn't really changed. I've basically done all the things that I would do normally in the office. I'm doing just at home right now, due to the nature of, remote, that the team was already remote. There's another project that I just started this week with a telecommunication company in the US, and that's a little bit different. It's there's a bit of a strategy phase early on right now, and typically we would all just get in a room and kind of jam. We'd have a whiteboard, everybody would have a marker, and we'd just be kind of jamming about like, how are we going to approach this? What are we trying to accomplish? It's a little bit different right now. We don't necessarily have that. You can do that on Hangouts, or video conferencing, but there's always like, latency issues and people talking over each other, and it's just not always the most conducive environment. So we've started using a tool called Miro, Miro. Used to be called Real-Time Board. That basically allows kind of group collaboration, and it's kind of the closest thing that I've seen to a virtual whiteboard. And so multiple people can edit and update at the same time. And we've started using that, and, we're a couple days in, and, knock on wood, it's going well. But it's certainly been a challenge, especially for huge, where we just like to get in a room and face to face and just kind of jam.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good insight. And I'm interested to hear about, Miro. I haven't seen any really effective ones. I mean, all of us use kind of joint collaboration on Google Sheets or Docs. That's about as far as it goes. So yeah, that's great. We just have a couple minutes left. Any questions from anybody out there, participants? You can ask your questions on the Twitter handle, at Product AMA for Ask Me Anything. We're here with Jonah Morris, who's from the huge agency, talking about product management in the agency world. Let's see, one more question about the kinds of tools that are really useful to you. So you mentioned Miro, obviously, but you also earlier mentioned Jira, working with developers on that, and Slack. What are your favorite go-to tools and why?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked that. I'm kind of obsessive about trying to find the latest product management tools out there. The cool thing is that there's a lot of like really great ones now. So one tool that I absolutely love and I use it on just about every single project is called Planet Poker, PLANIT poker.com. It allows you to do sprint planning remotely. It's really, really sophisticated. You can have a whole bunch of different scoring methods. If you want to use Fibonacci, you can use Fibonacci. You can use poker cards. You can use t-shirt sizes, so small, medium, large, extra large. And it allows people to vote in real time. And then you can compare the votes, and try to get to a great sprint planning session. So Planet Poker, I've looked at a lot of different sprint planning tools. Far and away the best one I've ever used. It's free, which is even better.
Wow.
So I really, really like that one and really advocate it.
Yeah. What about customer data and insights or feature requests? Like, how do you centralize and track all that stuff?
Yeah. Oftentimes it's a lot of like Google Sheets. I'm a pretty strong Evernote user. I've been using it for a long time.
Yay, Evernote, yeah.
Yeah, Evernote. Yeah. So I quite like that. What I feel like I haven't cracked is how to really make Slack that tool. We often bring a lot of clients into our Slack instance, and I haven't quite figured out how to turn it into that kind of tool. It's often a lot about like kind of mass communication or direct messaging. How can we turn that more into like a tool that helps surface features and requirements, so that we're not just kind of toggling between email and notes and all sorts of stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I think it requires, when I've thought about it, it requires the ability to tag stuff, right? Because what you're looking for is patterns and themes that then you can start to collect. You can get collections of inputs or feedback or insight, around certain problems, right? Because anecdotally, you don't remember them all, right? You remember the most recent thing, right? The one I've been using on a recent project is Airtable, and that's actually interesting. Yeah, and it's pretty neat. I would encourage people to take a look at that if they aren't using something. But yeah, it's really necessary because it's like a fire hose of ideas and inputs and everything, and you just got to have some way of organizing it to manage it. Yeah, that's cool.
I've heard great things about Airtable. Yeah.
Great, that's great. Do you guys do any road mapping with your clients?
Yes. Road mapping, you could have a whole conversation just on what the heck is a roadmap, and why is a roadmap not a project plan?
It's not, my favorite one is a Gantt chart is not a roadmap. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And sometimes that's what our clients are looking for. So we used I think Product Plan quite a bit, and I think we're starting to use we're going to start using RoadMonk shortly.
Cool.
Okay. Candidly, I haven't yet found a tool that I really love in terms of road mapping. I had used AHA for quite a while, but I haven't yet found something that is really really strong from roadmap standpoint.
Interesting. I had Latif Nanji, the co-founder of RoadMonk, on a sort of fireside chat a couple months ago at the TPMA, and that was really fun, very insightful, and they're really thinking outside of the box on, okay, road mapping has changed a lot, right? And so what are the real problems there? And of course, he's approaching it from a product management standpoint too, right? So so I think it may be my personal opinion, for what it's worth, is that they're certainly at the front of the pack, and they're local too. So you can give them direct feedback. Okay.
That's great.
So we're going to wrap up. Jonah, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. It's been really interesting chatting, and I look forward to, connecting with you in person soon and sharing war stories and that sort of thing. But yeah. Thursday. Yeah, Thursday is our next product AMA. You can see all the details on our Twitter account at Product AMA. And Jenna is joining us, who is the head of revenue growth and marketing at Owner, which is an RBC venture. So come back on Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Join us for that, and spread the word. Let people know what we're doing here, and that they can access the previous sessions on recordings on YouTube. And we'd love your feedback. So please suggest other topics, or give us comments on how we can do this better and keep everybody happy and passionate about product. So Jonah, thanks very much.
Thank you, Lee.
Great talking to you, and be safe, be healthy, and we'll all talk soon. Bye for now, everybody.
Thank you. Take care. Bye now.